All righty, everybody. It is 1 o'clock. Mr. Donovan, I don't know if you want to drive the car or you prefer me to drive the car. I defer to you, kind sir.
I will gladly let you do that.
All righty. Well, they don't give me the keys too often, so let's pray, okay?
Well, sounds good.
All righty. So at 1 o'clock, I am calling to order the Monroe County Board of Election meeting, noting that Ms. Shruti Rana has a proxy today. That proxy is Natalia Galvin. We were sent communication yesterday indicating that she will not be available for the first part of the meeting. So Ms. Galvin, welcome to the Monroe County Board of Election meeting. And thank you so much for participating. So we are all together. The meeting has been called to order. The next piece of business is the approval of the minutes. There has been an awkward moment with respect to approving the minutes. I will tell you my understanding and then look for Sherry to nod her head and make sure I have got it accurate. I don't know if people who are on the meeting will recall that last month we all had a bit of difficulty logging on to the January meeting and ended up having to have a second Zoom, receiving secondary information to log on to the meeting. Well, that must have also been an issue with respect to getting the meeting recorded, because when Ms. Sherry checked on our behalf to make sure that we had a way to view the meeting for the minutes, there is no formal recording of the meeting that occurred on January 6th, 2022. Have I got that right so far, Ms. Sherry?
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, that's correct so far. So I am drafting what I have of my notes but I don't start until new business. And I just took some sketchy notes because I've unfortunately learned to rely on the cat's videos. So I will be sending out a draft to everyone as far as I can record and ask for input from the other participants to help finalize the minutes. But I haven't done that yet.
So for the board, I will recommend that we move that responsibility until the next time that we assemble as a board. I don't know if you prefer a motion or.
I'd move to table the minutes for January 6th meeting.
I'll second.
Oh, all righty. Karen, will you call the roll? Please and thank you.
Okay, Chairperson, how about Clerk Brown?
Yes.
Board Member Garlitz?
Yes.
And Proxy Member Galvin?
Yes.
And the motion has been approved, 3-0.
Thank you. All right, moving on to old business. Man, I got a lot of responsibilities today. Item A under old business is voting space allocation update. I have spent the better part of this morning meeting with the representative from CISA, that is, let me see if I can get it right, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure. Oh my goodness, I get those first two right, but let me be clear. It's under the Department of Homeland Security. They met with me at Election Central. Karen and I met with the gentleman this morning. We had to break away, but he got to see everything at Election Central, the space where our equipment is stored in the north end of Showers, and the the storage facility in Ellettsville. After a brief lunch, we also drove him by the space at Napa that has been offered to us. We really just were out in the parking lot, just kind of looking into that area and getting a chance to express pros, cons, things like that. This gentleman is very, very nice. He's going to write up a report regarding his concerns and recommendations. And one of the nice things that he offered, which I think will benefit Monroe County, is he is willing, the churches that we use as polling sites, he is willing to work with the ministers of those churches to make sure that if they have any concerns about their church serving as a polling site, that he will offer mitigating recommendations. So just a phenomenal man. I think we all from the election conference really liked him. And he pointed out some very strong security concerns about different places and is going to be making some recommendations. And so I'm very, very grateful to him for that. Does anyone have any questions about that? I don't really want to talk about security recommendations on this meeting, but I'd be happy to answer as generally as I can any concerns that you would like to express. You're on mute.
I don't have any concerns, but is there anything that you can kind of elaborate on, generally speaking, about what he did or didn't say about storage unit in Ellettsville, use of Napa as a voting center, in-person voting center, any of that stuff? Is there anything in general?
Yes, sir. I will generally say that he had some security concerns about our space out at in Ellettsville, the storage facility out in Ellettsville. I noticed an antiquated camera system, as did he. There are no cameras on the actual space where we are, where our items are. And so he asked about the maintenance of any camera system that is operated by that facility. So for example, there's some footage that's monitored, and then there's some that you only recall that footage, say, if there were a security breach. And so for election, the storage of election equipment and related items, their recommendation by the Department of Homeland Security would be that there is a camera that is monitored at all times. So that's that specific one. When we went to Napa, like I said, we really just pulled into the front. He did express significant security concerns. I expressed to him my feeling that we only use it if we absolutely have to as a satellite facility, what my concerns were. And he said that if we should end up choosing to use it as a satellite, that he would be happy to write recommendations to get us through that temporarily. And then same thing, where cameras are placed, who monitors those cameras, or are you just pulling the footage if there's an incident? One of the things that I expressed to him, and I may not be articulating this in the best way because I don't do cybersecurity and infrastructure, but this is what I compared it to. You know how on an inauguration day, when you see Secret Service on top of all the buildings and they're monitoring everybody in the crowd and things like that. So it doesn't matter where you are in the crowd. I don't care who you are, where you are. If you are in their sites, they can pull your face up and know exactly who you were, what you did, where you were, what you had. There's no hiding on inauguration day. I don't care how many people are on the mall. That was when I was articulating what type of security would make me feel comfortable about having our equipment there. That was the kind of thing, and mitigating any bad actor that might seek to do us harm. That was the kind of thing that I expressed that I'd like to see. So that was what I said to him. And again, he said if we decide to use it, he would be happy to offer some mitigating recommendations. Does that answer your question, sir?
I think so. Maybe it was outside of his expertise, but did he mention anything about physical space concerns and or pros, or was he really just focused? I know he's cyber, but did he say anything else that might be beneficial for us?
He just said he felt it was a greater security risk than where Election Central is. but understood that it could come to that being our only option. And that he would do his very best. I mean, he's not gonna go out on a limb and put himself in a position for litigation, but he said, I'll make the best recommendations that I can for the space, should you decide that that's where it's going to be.
Got
Does
it.
that make sense?
Mhm. When and how soon is he going to get that to
He
us?
said that he would have a report within the next couple of weeks. So I'm hopeful that that means that we would have it by the next election board meeting in February, the first Thursday in February. Certainly, I would be happy to make that available if it comes in any sooner. But today, what he said was that it would be at least a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Ms. Galvin, did you have questions, comments, anything you'd like to share?
No, I'll just take my notes and defer to Chair Rana when she returns.
Okay. All right, so that is the update that I have for that. And so if there are no further questions, then I will move on to item B under old business, which is a discussion on the proposal that I shared for the 2022 satellite locations. And so for those of you who were on the meeting earlier this month, I mentioned I am not an artist. So to ask me to draw any kind of map or place any sites or anything was a little bit problematic. So I reached out to Karen and asked her if she would contact Jared, and Jared is on the meeting today, so that we could answer your question, Mr. Donovan, about showing you the sites on the map. And so unless you have questions for me, I'm going to ask if Karen and or Jared could take over at this time and present what happened.
Yeah, so basically, and I think Karen earlier sent out a link to the board members to let them have access to the web app. And to have access to the web app. And so what I've pulled up is the Monroe County website, and on the GIS webpage for Monroe County, if we scroll down to the bottom, we can see a tool next to our discontinued one for the redistricting and re-precincting process. For those of you who followed that, there's a web app for the current project that we're working on. So the purpose of this page is kind of to be a prototype of sorts, or an early option to look at ways that we can centralize election information as far as the map data goes for the county, allow options to allow people to download that data, that kind of thing, as we move to like expand the manpower on like the county GIS user team. So what we're looking at is a voter information map for Monroe County, and on the left side of this page, there are map layers that we can toggle on and off, and then there are blue icons that show the satellite sites that had been identified as possible options. So it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple right now, but you know, what we can do is we can take a look at these as you let me know which ones you want to take a look at, and kind of look how they impact various precincts, or look at imagery, that kind of thing.
So it's the 5 blue tabs.
Correct. So easiest way to take a look is to turn everything else off.
I was going to say, is there a way to, okay, there we go. That's a pretty nifty tool.
Yeah, and of course, anytime that you guys have requests for information like this, you can definitely have Karen reach out to me.
Clerk Brown, I think it's safe to say you could not have drawn this.
I think that's safe to say either that's, you know, I know when to stay in my lane and when it comes to art, I definitely stay in my own lane. That's not me, but I'm hopeful that you can see that I genuinely tried to pick the furthest out. One of the things that happened after our meeting, it was brought to my attention that the Eastview Church of the Nazarene may not be as viable an option as what I thought. There's been a change in management, and so I don't know that we would have, they had been wonderful to work with in the past, and I have no doubt that if they can contribute, they would. But the reason that there's 5 instead of 4 is that the Southside Church was recommended to me. And if you'll remember, I talked about Burgoon quite a bit. That had been making sure that those voters were not disenfranchised with a satellite facility. I was trying to get something as close to them as possible. But if the church on Lambkin Ridge Road was not available, the Southside Church was recommended. That the difference between those two is Lake Monroe. It'd be some effort. Instead of just driving straight up 446, you'd have to make your way over to, it looks like State Road 37 to get to the Southside Church. So I wanted that plotted as well so that you could see that I genuinely was making an effort to reach the more rural parts of Monroe County.
So the northwest, northeast, southwest, for lack of better description, are firm, and the southeast is, those two are the ones that could go either or. Is that what I'm hearing?
So I wouldn't use the term firm. This is what happened after we consulted with Allen County about how they were able to make satellites work successfully. He divided their county into quads. So that's where I started. And then I tried to divide it into thirds. So west, central, east, or thirds, north, central, south. And as I was trying to create options that would reach the most voters, I circled back around to the quadrants because we still have the central location. Am I making sense?
Yeah, and maybe I wasn't clear. I just mean those, the ones in the southeast, those two are the ones that are not firm for availability.
Well, so we won't have firm availability until we have a vote and can confirm those
Understood.
locations. So I guess I'm just kind of wanting to gauge how you feel about those, if you're comfortable taking a vote on those, if you have different feedback for me.
I think, excuse me, I'm sorry. I've got 4 little girls and 3 of them are in school. So I am a germ infested household.
Oh, bless your heart.
And I've got a cold. So I think if any of the staff is willing, I'd like to get some opinions on all of this as well from them, since they're the boots on the ground along with you, Clerk Brown, just on the viability of utilizing these 4 additional spaces in addition to downtown for those 4 weeks or those 2 weeks as suggested in the last meeting, versus keeping one central location consolidated into one. The idea that we tried the satellite before and it didn't seem, what I've heard is it wasn't successful, just according to the last meeting. And that could have been logistics versus planning, all that good stuff. And then kind of people, cost, all that stuff. If any of you, and I'm assuming I'm talking to Karen, Cherry, and Tree, if any of you are willing to speak on just kind of your thoughts, to elaborate on Clerk Brown's thoughts on what direction you think as we look at those 4 weeks plus primaries, what's best, what makes the most sense.
Well, let me
Alright.
say, I'm sorry, if I can say one thing, then I promise I'll be quiet, or I'll
Yeah.
very much try. In the interest of full disclosure, I have never used the fairgrounds as a polling site. I was just trying to think of the furthest location out, but I believe that they have internet and Wi-Fi and everything to make that a polling site for the Southwest Quadrant. They make other productions work there, but I have not used that one yet, so I could not speak to that one.
Yeah, I think for this discussion, we're assuming they're all available and will be or can be equipped as we need them. I think at this point, we're just kind of checking all of our options. So that's what I was meaning. So I don't know. I don't mean to put any of you three on the spot, but I'd love to hear from you guys too, if you're willing. And if not,
I will
really
say
understand and
something.
respect.
No, I will say something. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So I don't know if anybody has the exact perfect answer for the situation, but I will say that my concerns right now is that we are 75 days away from early voting starting, and that is shocking to me. So you're like, whoa, we are really, really on a tight timeline here. So to delay anything is going to be just backing it up again. So in my, it's not even a perfect world, but what I see working the best for me and my staff, and there's always logistics and there's the good and the bad, and nothing again is perfect. But if we could do early voting at Napa, and I know we're already talking about the security as some of the issue, and having it all there, because the 4 satellites really do scare me in the fact of trying to get staffing. We have an extreme, we're like maxed out right now, especially with Republicans, of getting that staff when we have it here at Election Central. To have 4 more locations and having to staff those, even if it's a minimal, it's still going to be more than what we've had to do before. So that does concern me a lot, along with the time. And if we did have it at Napa, I'll just tell you my pluses, and you can tell me the negatives, because there are negatives out there. But it definitely is a big space, and that's what we're looking for. That will help me a lot with my staff coming in to work, because the average, I don't know what the average age is, but all of my workers are at least 60 and a lot of 70 and some in their 80s. And so it's very difficult for them if they think that we are going to be too close. So in that big space, we can spread it out more than I can here or any other, well, not any other place. It's like a big gym. So that gives me that. And with them being safer, then I also know my voters are going to be safer. So that space is so amazingly attractive to me. I think it will be less money, and that is a big issue, but it's kind of the minor thing in a lot of ways for me. You can always get more money, and I'm very frugal. So for me even to say that, that's kind of crazy. But sometimes I can't always get more workers, and that is a reality. The parking is wonderful, and if I got that, then I would take Election Central and open it up to the mail ballots in the military and overseas. That would all be in-house here. And that's a big thing. We've talked about where we could put those. The mailed we've done in different places, but if you cannot really do the military and overseas apart from voter registration. They just go hand in hand. There's just too much, even going across the street would be very difficult. It happens many times an hour sometimes that they need to converse, and they need to be, I have staff there that only work during early voting. they're relying on the voter registration staff that works here year round, that knows a lot more information and has more access into SVRS, which is the state voter registration application that we use all the time. There's the good and the bad. I know some people don't like it because it's on Walnut. I think it's a good visibility place, so you can see the good there. It has access to 3 different roads, College and Walnut and 3rd Street, so that they could get to it very easily. It's first floor accessibility with no steps. We can have handicap parking right out in front. It would be a big plus too for our support, our IT support. If we have those 4 satellites, I get a little concerned that we're still limited on how much help we can get for IT. If Ellisville has a problem, how fast can they get to Lampkins Road when it's election day? There's a lot more staff available. So those are some logistics that probably could need to be talked out on maybe another level. So I think it would be a better help with the IT. And then there's just kind of that weird thing that's been going on. We hear about that smokestack across from us at Showers that it apparently isn't very stable. And the B line has been closed off in part for that. It is a concern with that fall, and that is really just across the street from us. And that's a little scary. So again, it's not a perfect answer, but it does look very appealing. I can see staffing it. I can see that the lines would be shorter because I can set up more e-poll books. I can have more space for people to actually vote. It's always going to be a challenge. You have a new place, you have a new location, you're going to have to do advertising. So there's all of that too, but I think we could handle it. So that's where I would vote if I had to vote.
Do we have a head nod from either Tree or Sherry? Is that a?
I'm gonna weigh in on this. My major concern with satellite locations is finding workers. If I just did straight people working from open to closing, that's 9. But we know because we deal with older people that I'm going to have to do split shifts this year. So I'm looking at 18 people per location. We have trouble now finding people to work. And with the pandemic still being upon us, it'll be more difficult. So that's my major concern. Above everything else is to actually be able to find people that will work the last 2 weeks of early voting in a different location.
I mean, I pay people a pretty good starting wage and I can't find people, so I get it. I mean, I totally get it. And that's one of my major concerns aside from the cost of it. And I
can give you a dollar amount. I can tell you about how much it would cost.
Yeah, what's the cost, like, for instance,
roughly
per unit?
Okay, roughly for one election, because I did some numbers. It's about 86,000 just in payroll for 2 weeks. That's for one election, the primary. That's not counting how much it will cost me to have it set up as far as for our IT people.
So that's just payroll.
That's me meeting payroll, 86,000 per election. And that's being conservative. That's only having 18 people per site.
So
220 for an election cycle.
Okay. So do you have that whittled down to per site dollars?
Yeah, I do.
What's that looking like?
Roughly $6,552 per day, per site.
Per site. And so
13 days in the primary, 13 days in the general.
And so,
and that's conservative, Mr. Garlitz. That's saying that nothing goes wrong.
Right.
That's
No, I get that. So that's saying that number would not change if we moved sites every week, but it would change fourfold.
No, that's not true. That's not true. Because once a site is set up, I've already paid the people that set up that site. But if you're moving it every 3 or 4 days, yes, they're going to charge me every time they move it. I'm going to be renting U-Haul trucks every time you move that equipment.
Okay, so either way, whether we have change a site every X amount of days, whether it's 5 days, 3 days, 7 days, or we do them all at the same time concurrently, the payroll cost will go up fourfold if we do them together, and it will go up, and that's even assuming we can get the people to do it. And then on the opposite end of that, if we move every time, payroll will go up simply because of setup and breakdown. Is that
That
what
is
you're saying?
true. Uh-huh.
Okay. And then, so that was one. Okay. Anything else that you've got?
No, that's my greatest concern is to be able to staff it efficiently every day.
Okay.
And I'm going to have to get some more equipment. I think, Karen, you can
Yep.
weigh in on that. I'm
Yep.
going to have more equipment, standalone equipment such as printers. I'm good on e-poll books and scanners, but the standalone printer, I'll have to get more of. I think I only have 5. I would have to have, and they run $3,500 a piece, if I'm not mistaken.
So, I mean,
So I'd have to find more of that.
we're talking worst case, a 4X on pretty much everything, payroll, equipment, all that, rental, and best case, somewhere upwards of whatever it would be to run one site, because we're talking, even if payroll doesn't change in terms of the actual hours that we utilize at that site, there's payroll to set up, payroll to break down, payroll to set up security and or equipment, moving things. So we're talking, I mean, I don't know what a conservative number would be there, but again, I'm seeing 4X at the worst case, and somewhere, if you move 3 times, technically after the first, it's still 4 setups, 3 moves. I mean, I would venture to say that that's probably a double at least, and that, I think that's conservative. So either way, we're spending a significant amount more, all with the assumption that we can even get the people to do it. Is that what I'm hearing? Is that fair, or am I way off?
I think that's fair.
Okay. Sherry, do you have anything else to add on that one?
I really agree with Karen and of course Tree as well on many aspects. I do note that parking for voting at Johnson Hardware is definitely a challenge for voters, and it also proves to be a real challenge for our workers, because the parking garage literally is further away, and you know, if mobility is an issue at all for anyone, it is quite a distance, and it is quite difficult. And in the past, 5 months, the city of Bloomington has even reduced the amount of street parking around Johnson Hardware because of some changes to 7th Street to make it a solid corridor without stop signs going all the way to the university. I don't know whether construction would be going on about the Johnson Creamery at the same time as our elections, but that's certainly being published in the newspaper as a possibility. I think parking at Napa seems, I assume we would have access to the property around Napa, plus the parking garage, the new parking garage on 4th Street is closer than the parking garage that is accessible to Johnson Hardware. And I don't know how much of a benefit it is, but with the transit center across the street, those who are oriented to taking public transportation can just walk across the street to Napa. So I'm oriented regarding parking for both poll workers and voters being better at Napa. Napa to me is a big open space, just like we look for every single poll site for election day. And it can be configured to allow entrance and check-in and voting space and exit, just like we do every other large poll site that we, the however 30 plus that we use on election day. With satellites in the past, because the last time we did satellites were both facilities were downtown, one at Johnson Hardware, one at Showers. So they were within a couple of blocks of each other. But needless to say, ballot control is huge for us. Absolutely huge. And we my phone to be making noises. So every day, those ballots were transported from the satellite facility, which was in downtown Bloomington, to Johnson Hardware, where we have that locked ballot, secure ballot room. And it's just a logistical thing, but that sort of daily management and transporting or security around that election equipment at any satellite, anywhere, is critical. I mean, that's so important to us in the past, and if anything, it's more critical now. So it's a logistical thing. It means transporting ballots from multiple locations if we have multiple satellites. And we have talked just internally that if we were able to have all voting at one site, minimum 2 sites, but at one site, for example, Napa needs to have a secure ballot room. And if we had that, then we wouldn't have to be transferring ballots and secured equipment with votes that have been scanned every evening. We could just lock it up, much like we do now at Johnson Hardware. But ballot security is really a big deal. And of course we know that, but it's a reminder that that means some security built into whatever voting sites we use, be it Napa or any satellite. Regarding training of workers, assuming we can find them, my guess is that, I mean, certainly everybody would have to be trained. There's no question, because those workers for early voting have to operate all the equipment plus a few extra that is not even used on election day. So either they get training just like everybody else, or we would be filtering out workers from where, let's say they're voting at Napa for early voting for 2 weeks, and then the satellites would gear up the last 2 weeks. We would almost be beneficial to have individuals who have been functioning at Napa to then filter to the other satellites to help manage the newer workers who are just using them for the first time. So it just becomes additional efforts and staffing demands, but not just all new staffing demands. It means probably loading extras in the first 2 weeks to gain the experience to troubleshoot as they then are available to filter out to any other voting locations for the last 2 weeks of voting. And that's if they are, we just do satellites the last 2 weeks of voting. So my net sum is I have great fondness of the idea of early voting at Napa. I really honestly do.
In person.
In person.
Nowhere else.
Well, there were way long lines at Johnson Hardware for both elections in 2020. And I believe in my heart that long lines discourage voting, at the end of the day. And so, although they were very patient and very willing, but there were folks who literally could not stand in line for that long because of picking up kids or not feeling well or other appointments. And if we knew about it, we would let them in early, but we don't always know if they're down and around the corner that they are stressing for their limited time. I think a larger voting facility like Napa would help reduce the lines. If we want to have multiple voting locations, in my opinion, Johnson Hardware would be my second choice. Napa would be my first. So I would almost see Johnson Hardware as the satellite and Napa as the primary in-person voting site.
So if you had in-person at one site at Napa, is there any need whatsoever for another facility other than Johnson? And that, I guess that goes to everybody. That
You're talking about if.
I need to know more too.
Sorry. Yeah.
So ask away if maybe I'm not clear.
So are you saying that you'd use, what would you use Johnson Hardware for?
That's what I'm asking. If
You're asking us.
yes, if in-person
Okay.
early voting is at Napa, right?
Uh-huh.
And we have the capacity to meet security needs and deadlines, and we have the capacity to meet operations deadlines, which I hope both those folks are on here. I apologize, I don't know your names, but IT and operations. I hope you guys are here to answer some of those questions as well. I can build out a ballot room that's the size of the one at Johnson Building in probably half of a day by myself, but that doesn't mean someone can't run through the wall, right? So I need to know
Yeah.
if that can be done even. That's another whole other issue.
Okay, Karen has that answer because I heard
Okay.
it earlier in this meeting.
Okay.
Yes, so if we had Napa and that'd be all walk-in, all early voting down there, then I would want Election Central to be completely the administrative part, that you would
Yes.
have the mailed ballots and the military and overseas ballots. That
And
all
can
of
be
this,
done. Capacity is there and available at Johnson Building for that to take place.
we actually have
Oh,
already
yeah.
done that in the primary of 2020. The back room that I have, that's all military and overseas. And then in 2020, we did not have early voting for the first 3 weeks that we normally have. Usually we have 4 weeks, but we only had 1. So those 3 weeks we had all in here, the mailed ballot situation. And believe me, we took up every inch of this place, but it worked like a
Mhm.
clock. It worked
So-
wonderful.
So then to piggyback on that, tell me about showers. I still have absolutely no idea what we do or why we do it at showers. What is currently there? And if we went this direction, whether it be the 4 sites or 5 sites, including Johnson, or the 2 sites, is showers still a necessity? Or can we remove that from the space allocation, get it off of people needs, money needs, all that stuff? I don't even know what's there.
Okay, I guess,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead, Karen. Okay, well, I guess the showers building is me because I'm the one that does your mail-in ballots.
So that would be moved.
If you move me, then I don't need showers.
Come
But
to me.
you have to put me somewhere where I have access, basically, to the software system, and it has to be secured.
So that can be done at Johnson Building if there's no in-person voting there.
Election Central.
Yes.
Okay.
The other possible use of, I'll just say one more thing. The other possible use of showers, but I'm not sure it's ideal, is that we could do trainings there for poll workers, especially if there's multiple trainings over the period of time that, different workers are phasing in and out plus election day. However, that is not a space that we would use outside of the maybe 6 to 8 weeks right around elections. So we would only use it for maximum 4 months a year. So it would be kind of not used for the rest of the time unless the county chooses to use it for other uses during non-election months that are going on. We usually,
I'm sorry,
We-
Sherry. Parking is still bad in showers. It's
parking is not
awful.
great, but you're talking about 20 people as opposed to hundreds of voters. But the other thing is, in the past, we have done trainings either in hotels, we've done it at the convention center, and with enough planning, I think we could accommodate training needs if it's just election day training at those facilities. If training gets to be
what
more
facility?
complex with more early voting workers staged over different periods of time, then training gets spread out for longer periods of time too.
Can I ask a quick question related to showers? Tree, do you have any storage there that you have besides that?
Yes, I do have storage there downstairs. I think the rooms that we're talking about are the two big rooms upstairs that we used as a satellite location. It's not convenient to get to. You have to take an elevator or stairs. And parking is not good. And I think sometimes they try to sell it as good parking, but it is not.
Can you get that stuff out of storage somewhere else if we use these other buildings? Or will that still be a need?
Well, I don't want to, I kind of don't want to give that up. That storage that I have there up. Karen, your thoughts? I don't want to give it up.
I agree. We know whether our guy today from Homeland Security agrees, it's the most secure place that we have. It is safe. It's not perfect. We need a lot more space for Bob to actually work on them, but we can't move it here. We would not want to move it to Napa in just a transition if we're going to use that for voting. So it is the best place to keep it there right now. And it's not a big room and no one's wanting the room. So why would we want to move it?
Okay, so storage there isn't even really in question. We're just talking about these other spaces, at least in theory.
Right now.
So, excuse me. So best case scenario, 2 buildings where staff and people would be. Worst case, 6, 7 for early is what I'm hearing. I have 3 other questions that I really need answered. Number 1 would be parking at Napa. Every time I drive by there, there's nobody in that whole space surrounding basically where the Napa building is. If you look at from an aerial view in quadrants, right? The Napa building itself, the 2 to the direct west of that, and then the parking that's available there south of Napa has the convention board committed to us that all of that parking would be available for voting. Because I think that would be an important thing to secure. And again, I don't ever see anybody there. It's kind of a semi-construction messed up parking lot anyway. It's not like there's lines there, but people can certainly park if needed. So maybe that's why people are deterred from parking there presently. I don't know the answer to that. So that would be number 1. And I don't know the answer when we can get that answer, but then number 2 for IT and operations, talking about Napa, hearing that that's a very viable option in terms of staffing and looking at it. Number 1, do we have the security IT? Do we have the security capacity to build this out in due time? And then for operations, or lack of better terms, whatever that department is within the county, do we have the same capacity to make physical alterations to the building in terms of adding a ballot room, which doesn't need to be very big if we just duplicate what's at Johnson building. And then any other partitions, additions to the bathrooms, anything that's of concern in that respect. I know there's blacking out the windows is one concern. The bathrooms was a concern. Partitioning was a concern. Perhaps the floor or some sort of change to the floor was a concern. That back roll-up door and its security was a concern. All things that in my world can be easily mitigated in short time if you can find the help to do it. But I don't know if that's something that we can get done in a time that would allow us to use that building the way we need it to. So those would be my questions for, I don't know if we can get the parking thing answered, if that we can get that commitment right now, but for IT and or operations, if they are on here. And again, I'm terribly sorry, I don't know who you are yet. Perhaps no one's on from those departments.
I thought I saw IT. Is Eric Evans not on?
Okay, so those those would be my three lingering questions then about at least the Napa facility itself. Something that Karen brought up that or maybe Sherry, you brought it up. I apologize, I don't remember who it was, but the idea that public transit is right across the street seems like a very positive thing for voters. And I don't know how far out of the city, if at all, it would go, but I do think that within the city, for sure, that's a positive to bring people right there. I know that one of the negatives that's been brought up, I think Clerk Brown, you brought this to our attention, was the potential for fumes and some of those other environmental issues for people waiting in line. I don't know if anyone could speak to that, but I would imagine that when that facility was built, there was some sort of mitigation put in place, because basically anything you do that has an impact on the environment anymore with building, there are very strict rules that have to be adhered to. I mean, and that could be from the shape of those canopies for the exhaust fumes all the way to some sort of fan or suction. I have no idea, but I would imagine that building isn't that old, that something was put in place there to help mitigate that. I don't know that for a fact. That's not the gospel. But I would think that, being that it's certainly after lead paint rules, that something would be in place for that. So those are kind of my questions that I think we need some sort of commitment from the welcome, Professor. And congrats, I'm assuming.
Yes, thank you. And I've been listening for a while. I just didn't want to interrupt. So
No, that's okay. So I think that getting that commitment from whatever body we need the commitment for on parking would be important, whether that's verbal or in writing. It doesn't really matter. I think we need to just get some sort of thumbs up on that. And then we need an idea from IT and operations to see how viable some of these changes that it sounds like we would need to make, how quickly that can be done. And I know this has been an ongoing conversation for a long time. And then I guess the lingering question would be about the training, whether that be at Showers or somewhere else. And this is perhaps my ignorance showing, but I don't see why, being that we're in a university town, university city, why we couldn't utilize some sort of space at the university or at the convention center, or even, I know the local K-12 schools probably are strapped for space, as they always are, but even utilizing some sort of cafeteria every night, just whatever that might be. Surely we can get some sort of partnership in place with the university, with MCCSC, with RBB, or even with Seven Oaks or any of the private schools down south. So that seems, the training to me, the space allocation for that seems like that we could make that happen relatively quickly, whatever that may be. I know it's a long time, but it's, or I should say, I know it's a stretched out amount of total time, but it's really only in short spurts per day, per week. Is that fair?
I'll relate on that. Of course, we've talked about these potential locations for quite a long time. I have never felt that training would be the deciding factor at all.
Yes.
I believe we've made a commitment for 2022 elections where we're going to have training, and that gives us enough time in the future to make commitments elsewhere, at the university, at the convention center, wherever we choose.
So it's
to do that.
covered.
So
You have it covered for this year.
I believe so. I've gotten contracts from a hotel. I can only assume those contracts are arranged.
Fine.
I'm not
Well,
a
then that-
contract signer.
Then we can cross that off our list. I think I have all of my questioning and talking in for now. I appreciate everybody's insight. I think that's really important to hear from everybody. And then the last thing that I would add is, I think no matter what we do, if it's within our ability at all of these sites, if we're making any changes whatsoever, that we have not, I hate to cross the terminology here, but some sort of exit survey just from the public, whether it be a quick yes, no, does this work? I think that would be important feedback from the public, no matter what we do. If that can be done, if we have the capacity to do it. I think that it is always nice to hear from the people that are not only on the ground performing the work at hand, but I think it's important to hear from the people that are actually coming in to vote and what their opinion is. And it doesn't need to be a narrative. I think it's, does this work? Does this not work? You know, I don't know that we need to allow people to write 17 pages about their opinion, because that will happen. But I think it's important to hear from the voters about potential site changes or site changes as they happen. So that's just a little anecdote I wanted to throw out there. And with that, I don't have anything else to add. 28 minutes later.
Would it be remiss of me to ask for a short summary so I can kind of figure out where we are? And first, also, let me, I just want to thank Ms. Galvan for stepping in and being my proxy for today. I really appreciate that. I guess, Mr. Garlitz, do you feel like
I'm happy to summarize it.
you can quickly catch me up? Or I've been trying to pay attention to this discussion and kind of,
Yeah.
figure
So, excuse me, if you look at the share screen, Jared was able to pull up kind of a map that I had requested last meeting just to see where the facilities are. They're the blue tabs. All of them are still, and anyone chime in if I say anything wrong, because I don't remember what I ate for dinner last night. So the blue tabs are what we have as potential sites for satellites for the upcoming election cycle. None of them are set in stone. However, the southeast, the southeasternmost sites, those are the ones, they are more in question than the others, I guess is what I'm hearing. Then we also talked about, we heard from Tree Sherry and Karen about their thoughts on the different options, whether we go with this 5-site plan or the idea of utilizing Napa as in, excuse me, in person. And they chimed in and said that Napa sounds like a wonderful spot to do in person. They could utilize the Johnson building for mail-in and military and administrative needs. And if we could find a way to, if we did go that route with Napa being the only in-person, my concerns and questions, I brought up parking, IT operations, and then the ability to, those 3 ladies brought up the ability to have a secure ballot room on site would be really, really important. I think that's it. That's the 1-minute recap.
Okay, I think Eric Evans has joined us, so you can ask him your IT questions.
Hello, everybody. I'm Eric. I am an IT guy.
Hi, Eric, the IT guy.
Hi, Donovan. What's your role in this? I don't know that I've heard your name before.
That may be a good thing. I'm an election board member.
All right.
Yeah. So I think one of the questions that we had, because Napa is a wide open space right now,
Right.
what does that look like in terms of, I guess, the ability for you and or your department or your designee? Can we get the IT build out that we need, i.e. internet, computers, security, telephone, if that's needed? I don't even know if that's an option, but is that something that can be made available to us or to that facility in short order to make sure that we're ready for the upcoming election cycle? Is that a problem, or is that?
It presents some challenges, and it depends a lot on what the purpose of that building is going to be.
If it was in-person voting.
Okay, if it's going to be in-person voting for the primary, are we talking about for the primary, which is like in May?
Yes.
Okay. If that's the scenario that we're looking at, then we almost are forced to use bandwidth from Xfinity. We think that there's an Xfinity circuit already going to that building because that's what had been used there before, and that's what the equipment that we're seeing there is. So if we can use an Xfinity connection, what we had planned on doing was putting a special router on each end of it to encrypt everything and then use that as our bandwidth. If we can't use Xfinity, then we have to look at putting fiber in that building, which is almost assuredly going to mean running a conduit under the street there from probably where the conduit is currently going in at the convention center. I don't see us being able to get that going by May, but I do think that the Xfinity thing is completely viable, and that almost assuredly we could have up and running by May if you're going to use that for a live in-person voting.
Actually,
Okay.
if we do early voting there, it would be April 5th. April 5th is when early voting starts.
Okay. Yeah.
Is that still an okay timeline?
It ain't great, but I mean, we'll know more here in about a week, I'm thinking.
Okay. And then are you also the proper person to ask about security, cameras, locks? If we
I'm definitely one of the ones that'll work on that. Is Greg on the call? Is Greg here? Greg and I kind of tag team on that. I can certainly listen to your questions, and if I can't answer them, I can get you to someone who will.
My only question is, can it be done in time?
I mean, realistically, I think it should be. I'll be honest with you, I've not been really happy with our security vendor as of recently. But if it's made clear to them that this is something that needs to be made a priority over everything else, and then both Greg and I lean on them, I think it's probably doable.
Okay. Those were my only questions, just to see if it could be done. I guess that's what I needed to know too.
Yeah, the biggest question that powers all of what you've asked is the bandwidth. And, really, I think we'll be able to get enough bandwidth from Xfinity to do what you're wanting to do, and then secure it by encrypting it, with a hardware-based router solution. I think it'll be fine.
Okay. Then who?
Okay, I'm sorry, but for early voting, I don't need wireless. Remember, I have those Nighthawks that will pull off of Wi-Fi. I'm concerned about SVRS, and Karen, I'm sure, can we get SVRS through the internet, or does it have to be a hardwired?
That's a good question. Well, it should be. You
Yeah.
should.
If you've got wireless, you've got hardwire there somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay, so
basically.
that's my only concern.
Yeah, if we set it up the way I anticipate us setting it up, it should you'll be able to do all the same things there that you would at Election Central.
Who's our contact for the physical side of this? Who would be the person we need to ask about that?
Like the physical questions about the building, I think that's all Greg Crone.
Greg, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like literally building a wall, like who's that person?
Yeah, I'm pretty
Greg?
sure Greg is the one.
Okay.
All
All right, so we need to get with him too, or whether that be, just via email or something, we need to obviously figure that side out, if that's even doable by April 5. And it'll.
Should I start planning on coming to these meetings now? Do you need me to start regularly coming?
I don't know. I'm probably not the person to answer that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would have come today. I just didn't know that. I didn't know I was on the agenda.
No, I think that I unintentionally brought you into the agenda. I just want to.
That's all right.
I want to
Yeah.
move as quickly as we can. I know this has been a lingering issue for the board since forever ago, but I know that there are so many questions that we need answered before we can even make a decision. And I think that's important and a part of our responsibility as a board to have those questions answered. So I think we're doing the right thing here. I just, I don't yet know all the people to email and call and bug yet. So I apologize for that. But I'll work on that. That's all I have. I don't have any other questions then if we don't have.
Donovan, I think you were also providing a summary to Shruti regarding what the discussion was, and part of that is the cost estimates that Tree shared.
Yes, I forgot about that.
Thank you. And can I ask a preliminary question? Just when you talk about the costs, are you talking about the satellite locations in addition to early voting at Napa, or is this some of it in either or some of it is pending? Or are we just kind of discussing it all holistically?
And mine is a guesstimation of how much it would cost to run 4 other satellite locations during the primary and the general.
Okay.
So just in payroll, about 85 to 86,000 per election. And that doesn't figure in anything but payroll.
Okay, thank you.
And those other things to consider would be, rental of vehicles to move things, the space rental, the utilities, if there are any bills for that. Is that fair to say?
It's more, the utilities they don't normally charge me for, but it is, I have to have, U-Hauls to move the equipment. And then whatever the company that we use for setup and breakdown is what they would charge me to make sure that all the machines have internet connectivity.
Okay. And then one of the concerns about that we had brought up the last time, the 2 options, whether we run, concurrent facilities all at the same time for 2 weeks at the end, or one facility 1 week at a time. The concern there was staffing. So the actual people involved, to getting them available and willing to work. So that was something that was brought up too. Thank you for bringing that up, Sherry. I forgot about that part.
Well, thank you for catching me up as well. And then, Mr. Garlis, I don't know if we'd interrupted you when I asked for with my clarification.
Nope.
And are we, I'm just, again, trying to just catch up and make sure I'm all caught up. Are we just discussing different logistics right now, or was there any kind of, I just want to make sure there was no pending motion or something like that that I had jumped in the middle of. Okay.
No, we were on B of old business, just talking about the additional sites and what is out there and available and all that good stuff. So I don't know. That said, my opinion would be that we need the parking and the operations answered for Napa, if we were to go that route, like ASAP, before we can even make a motion. And then on the flip side of that, we need availability of the satellites, those 4 options. If we were to go that direction, we need kind of firm availability. So I think we need to, what we know is that Napa's available, and because we know that from previous meetings. We know Johnson is available, we know Showers is available. We have not yet established what they are available for. We don't know if the satellite facilities are available yet, but even on the facilities that we do know we can utilize, we don't have some important questions answered to see if we can even utilize them at the capacity that we want to utilize them at, or potentially utilize them at. So I think all that's really important, and I would say it's really important to have it answered quickly. So I'm happy to shoot those emails around and ask those questions and get those answers if we want to reconvene and make a motion before February. I'm available and open to doing that if needed, but I'm also not the person that would set that meeting. So I just want to throw it out there.
Okay. I'm open and available as well. And I guess, I don't know if you're still technically chairing the meeting, but I was going to,
It's all you.
Okay. Okay. I just didn't want to step on your toes. Well, thank you again for filling in while I was out. I guess, should we, I don't know if we've heard from the clerk yet, or it's Clerk Brown. I believe you would be the next agenda item anyway, or.
Okay, well, first, I want to say the satellite facilities that I proposed were in response to the commissioner's presentation that we consider facilities other than downtown for the more rural parts of Monroe County. So if it's on the table to scrap the satellites and use Napa, I just want to be, for the record, to be clear that I attempted to make more facilities available to the more rural parts of the community, because that was their concern as to part of the problems that we had having facilities downtown. So I feel like I brought that before the board for your consideration, and I tried to expand what was done under the previous clerk's administration, because 3 to 4 days did not, at each location, did not work. Second, I guess that I want, one of the things that you missed, Chairperson Rana, was I met with CISA this morning at Election Central, and he came to Election Central. We went to the north end of Showers. We went out to the storage facility, and the soonest that we can expect to hear from him is a report within the next couple weeks. We did, after a quick lunch, drive him by Napa. He did say that it was a higher security risk for Napa than it was at Election Central. But he also said that, because I explained we were looking at various satellites, that he would do his best to help us mitigate security concerns if Napa was where we landed. I saw if we were forced to use Napa, I saw it more as a satellite in that I do not want to lend, and I've said this on public meetings before, to voter confusion by uprooting the Monroe County voters who still believe, some of them still believe they voted Curry. We have now gotten them acclimated to Election Central. So I've certainly listened with an open mind. I guess that I want to be clear where the board is in terms of if this would be more palatable to me if we are only talking about 2022 because of the efforts to consolidate everything under one roof. If we are only talking about the use of Napa and or satellites for 2022, it would be easier for me to digest the things that have been said today. I've made no secret of the fact that we have an incredible team. Our team can do anything. We can make almost any variable work. But I truly believe the best indicator of future behavior is past behavior. And if we make it work, we're going to be forced to continue making it work, which I don't see as being fair to voters of Monroe County with respect to a place that they're familiar with, that can expand and allow for not just me, but future clerks to not have to worry about space. So I guess I'm not sure where we are. Are we talking about uprooting everything and seeing where the spaghetti lands, or what are we talking about?
Well, I could chime in unless you'd like to first.
Oh, sure. I was just going to ask a question, again, in my attempts to catch up, which was that I believe at our last meeting, we had discussed sort of testing out some of the sites and seeing how they go for the primary. I mean, we'd obviously have to do it for not just the primary, but the regular election, but, you know, sort of as a test run for some of it. But I don't mean to interrupt.
That is what we said, because we had made clear that the satellite location we had on the north end of Showers was not successful. The best indicator of future behavior is past behavior. You've heard my chief deputy on today's meeting explain the parking was absolutely terrible. There's nothing. I was just over there this morning with the gentleman from CISA. There is nothing that makes me feel comfortable that the parking would be any better. That especially the logistics of navigating that building for my elderly voters and disabled voters, taking that elevator up to the second floor and trying to navigate that space on the second floor. There's nothing that makes me feel comfortable with that. Yeah, we were talking about, you are right. We were talking about the viability of satellites and seeing if those work in response to the commissioner's request. And it would be, they've agreed to go back with us and ask for more money if we need to have more money, because if you use it as a satellite in the primary, you have to use it as a satellite in the general. If we ran out of money, we would have to go back before council, and the commissioners agreed to go back. If satellites were a colossal failure, as the one was on the north end of Showers, then we have a reference point that I can't continue to justify asking the council for an additional, say, $500,000 to operate satellites if nobody shows up and takes advantage of them. The other thing, I apologize, I don't want to jump back and forth, but if you notice that fifth location, it was because after we left the meeting in early January, the Church of the Nazarene, I received more information about that I didn't have at the time when I was speaking, that they might not be as viable a site. And so one of my team members recommended the Southside Christian Church. That's why there's 5, not 4, as I had discussed. And the difference between the Nazarene Church and the Southside, I was thinking about the Burgoon voters. There had been some party feedback about disenfranchising those voters on the very southeastern side of the community. The difference between those 2 locations is Lake Monroe. Those Burgoon people would have to navigate and go around to the south side if we can no longer use the Eastview Church of the Nazarene. So those were plotted on the map. Thank you so much, Mr. Jarrett. And so I guess I want to be sure where we are, because we've talked about staff, the ability to staff. We've talked about the cost. We've talked about making sure that we have overseas and military ballots under the Johnson hardware roof. And when we didn't know what we didn't know, when we had more room because corrections and probation were working from home. Again, this pandemic magnified what we already knew, which was that we needed more space. And as everyone on the call knows, I have been fighting to have that space contained under one roof. So I guess I want to be sure, are we talking about 2022? Are we just uprooting altogether? And if we are, I gotta say, you probably wouldn't have a unanimous vote.
I think, and this is just me speaking, after attending the election board training and statewide meeting in Indianapolis, and just hearing from really everybody involved, I don't think one single person has said our situation is ideal, not one. So I think that I am happy and more than willing to commit that the idea of getting everything under one roof is not only the best situation, best practice for us as it is for everyone else, according to not only the experts in the field, but those who came to speak regarding that very thing to us at a 3-day meeting, whether it be the former Secretary of State from another state, our Secretary of State, professionals from Department of Homeland Security, or anyone else that was up there speaking. So I'm more than willing to state that I absolutely commit that is our end goal, is to get everything under one roof. How we get there or when we get there, I don't know. But Clerk Brown, you have my commitment that that will be my certainly my push until I am no longer welcome on this board, because I think that's something that's very, very important. So it's not only my opinion, but it's those of the experts. In terms of where we're at right now, and to help answer the 2022 question, I always thought of this as a temporary, semi-temporary, because we don't know how temporary it is, depending on when we can get that space allocation for everything else. So I think to kind of flush that question out, my outlook on this has always been, what is the best situation in the short term that makes as many people happy as we can, that fall within the confines of security and physical changes and the ability to staff and monetary constraints and all of those things. So that's where I'm looking at it is from this temporary to semi-temporary angle of what can be done now to make it the best we can without having that end goal come to fruition just yet. But I could not agree with you more. I think when you've got about every clerk from every municipality across the state saying it, professionals on the federal level saying it, we've got to push to get that somehow, some way. And I'm not, I haven't been around long enough to know what the issue is with the other occupant of the Johnson building versus where their potentially going in the future and what's happening on construction of the Justice Building and so on and so forth. There's just a lot of moving parts. But I think that I think, I'm not speaking for anyone else, but I think that that's probably the direction about everybody involved wants to go. And I certainly, you have my support in that as well. So I just want to make that crystal clear.
Thank you. Let me say this, and because we've got to make some decisions. We've got to take some votes. We've got to factor other agencies and people into this. I truly see it the reverse of what I heard today, which is the clerk's office has to be open for early voting for those 28 days. The extension of the clerk's office at this time is Johnson Hardware Building. So I see if it is absolutely no choice, Napa as a satellite as opposed to the primary place to vote. Again, voter confusion. Again, we're talking about a satellite at the busiest, I don't do traffic patterns, but one of the busiest intersections within Monroe County. I'm still concerned about the safety of the voters because inevitably we're going to have some lines. Even if we have more than one place, we're going to have some lines. And so I feel more comfortable if we can avoid lines with the line being in a less busy part. The cost is a factor on the satellites. Staffing is a factor. I think we've made those points clear when we talked about just one satellite on the north end of Showers. I genuinely was trying to meet the commissioners halfway, that if we could figure out a way to make this work. I tried to present an idea that maybe built upon what my predecessor did. If we can't, and they agreed to go with us to get the money, if it is a success. If we cannot make it work and we can only do one, it's not responsive to what they said. And, with respect to attracting more rural voters, what would we do? How are we gonna, because I feel like I tried. I feel like I presented the best possible options that didn't try to disenfranchise any part of Monroe County. So if we're not going in that direction, do you have some thoughts?
I don't know if that was directed to Board Member Garlitz or not.
Either person, because I remember the specific quote. No, I won't say specific. Let me paraphrase the quote. Everybody doesn't come downtown. That was what one of them said. Everybody doesn't come downtown. So if we only have Election Central and we only have Napa and we use one as primary, one as backup, then what are we going to say?
Who's one of them? One of
the commissioners. One of the commissioners, when they did their presentation to us back in September, Chairperson Ron, if you'll correct me if I believe the quote was, everybody, that you need to have satellites that aren't downtown. Everybody doesn't go downtown. That's what I feel like they said. So I tried to build on my predecessor's effort to get the satellites out and make them more accessible.
When was the last time we had the satellites under the previous
So
clerk?
Karen, if you'll help me, what year did Clerk Robbins do the one where it moved every 3 days? I feel like it was right when I came, 2012.
That could be. The last time we've had satellite was over in the Showers in 2016.
Which was a failure.
I don't mean that one. I mean where it was out
Moving.
On the outskirts of the county.
We had 2008, we had, IU, the Hyper Building,
You have rough voter turnout data for that year versus the last 12? Go 14 now. Geez.
Yeah. Yeah,
I still feel like it's 2020. How is it 2022 already?
exactly. Right. So some of the satellites did work well. I mean, the one at the Hyper building, it was overwhelmingly, I'd say, well, it depends on how you look at successful. It was not a good setup for us. Remember, we were actually voting in the racquetball room, and it was November, and it was extremely hot November, if I'm getting that right. Unless I'm getting my primary in November, but I'm pretty sure that's right. Long lines, but there was just, 2008 was a big election. You just got to remember that was a crazy election. But the moving around had to be right in that time. I know, Tree, you weren't there, but 2008 or 2012, kind of in there. 2012, we had.
I'm looking for data on 2008. Like you said, I wasn't there, so I didn't keep any records. I did find some old records in the archive. So let me continue to look here a second.
Sure. And I wasn't in this position. All I was is just helping out on like my early voters coming in. That was what I did. They just called me and told me where to go and tell me what to do. So I don't have those records either.
And just while we're on the topic, because I think this is a memory thing and sort of a looking it up, hopefully. For 2016 with showers, it was an early voting satellite. Is that correct? Or was it also, okay, was it also for the general or just?
You use it for the primary, you have to use it for the general.
Okay. But it was so it was both Johnson Hardware and showers for both elections. Okay.
Yes. And so Tree has testified, not testified, sorry, I feel like I'm at the State House. Tree gave a presentation at one of the work sessions at my request because we had lines. It's a presidential, you're gonna have lines. We had lines. We would say to people who were standing in line, if you don't want to wait, not very far away, within walking distance, you don't have to move your cars, is a satellite facility at the north end of Showers. And that's where you had asked me to refresh your memory about $13 per voter. People preferred to stay in line at Johnson Hardware. And so the few people who accessed the north end of Showers, it was so few that it cost us $13 per voter to process that. And so, and again, as she has talked about today, the parking was absolutely terrible. There's a slope that concerns me with respect to my disabled and elderly voters. And I think I told the story, I think on a work session, but I know I've said it publicly. I have a young voter, 21 years of age, who happens to be an intern in the Showers on the city side, but for whatever reason, she said she has to go through the county side to get through the city side. And she's athletic, perfectly able-bodied. She said, I nearly trip over myself trying to get to where I do my internship. So if I struggle, I can't imagine what it would be like for an elderly or disabled voter.
Okay, I do have your stats. What year do you want? 2008, the general, it was a madhouse. You had almost 70% turnout.
Okay.
So it was a big turnout. 2010 general, 39%.
Now, qualify those with whether we had the extending satellites or not. Please.
Well, I think that 2008, you did have the moving satellite locations, correct, Karen?
And as we know, that is a crazy outlier. That was one of the highest turnouts nationally as well.
Yeah.
So,
we definitely had some satellites in 2008.
How about 2012? Because it was a big turnout too.
See, I think we did, but do you remember, was it 12 that we had problems with, we didn't have the e-poll books? See, do you
Correct.
remember any of that? Was that the?
That was before my time.
Yes.
We didn't have Eve Whole Books in 2012, and here's what I remember, because I was here in the Justice Building as chief deputy. We had a different election supervisor, but I remember the previous clerk asking me to get people to help set up and break down at the different sites. And I sort of remember ECC. I sort of remember something way on the west side, like a church on the west side. And so I just recall it was logistically challenging. But mine was peripheral because there was a different election supervisor.
Okay, and I have another question. And again, I apologize if I'm just repeating something that was said earlier as I'm trying to catch up. So it sounds to me like we're thinking about these various combinations of things that could work and what we think would work best. And it sounds like I'm also hearing, usually I get to assign my students homework, but it sounds like you're all giving me homework for coming in late, which is to say that we need more information on some of the satellites, some of the proposed satellites. We need more information on the proposed, I guess, logistics of how Napa and other places would be set up for both early voting, but also in the general. Is that correct? Because I guess Board Member Gardlitz, you said that there were some outstanding questions that you wanted to get information on.
Well, I think it's safe to say that we are, no matter how we go about this, at this point, as we sit here right now, we are, we have to juggle what is more solid, what's on more solid ground. And my concern is, after hearing from IT, it sounds as if they can get what they need to get done at the facility that we already have. What the question marks are is, can we physically make that building what we need it to be? But then on the flip side, can we physically make the other the potential satellite buildings what they need to be? Can we get them secured as we need them to be? Can we staff them as we need them to be staffed? And that all falls under the overarching question of, are they even available for use?
Mm-hmm.
And we know that that's not like super flimsy, but we know we have these other three buildings no matter what. That's been determined already. So I guess, if we're forced to make, if someone puts a motion out today that we have to, that we want to make a decision and vote, I don't know how we could possibly vote on the additional 4 spaces because we don't even know if they're available. And either way, we're backing people into a corner.
And just to clarify, when you said the 3 we know, is that Johnson Hardware, Napa, and Showers?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Here, this is my opinion as I sit right here. I'm not speaking for operations. I keep calling it operations. Forgive me. Is there a better term for the physical side of the county department that would make changes to the buildings? Who should I refer that? What should I call that? Anybody? In the school world,
Operations works for me.
Okay. In the school world, that's building and operations. So I can't speak for them, but what I can tell you is what we've discussed as the physical needs for that building don't seem to be anything that is out of the ordinary or would take longer than a week with the proper crew.
Napa that you're talking about, just
Correct.
to clarify. Sorry.
Correct. Because that's the only one that we have physical changes to. Even at the satellites, it doesn't seem like we would really have physical changes. We would need security and so on and so forth. But physical changes, I'm not speaking for them, but that doesn't seem like a big deal at all. What I've heard as issues would be bathrooms, potential build out of a ballot room, secure ballot room, which in Johnson building right now, I'm saying that's 10 by 12. Is that fair, Karen? Tree, I think that's about what that room is. So that's less than well, it's probably $1 million in wood right now, but It's relatively inexpensive to build something out like that, and can be done quickly. Now, what that looks like in terms of the locking mechanisms and all that, I don't know anything, because it's a crazy world, and it takes longer to even order something on Amazon right now. But if we go that direction, it is my opinion that seems like a more viable option that we know is in front of us, and we are then backing IT and operations into a corner, rather than backing the clerk's staff, all of her staff, into a corner, running around figuring out how to staff all these additional facilities that we don't even know we have yet. So that's my big question mark. If we were to vote, I don't know how I could vote for that today, since we don't even know that. And after hearing Karen, Sherry, and Tree on their viewpoints on it, and Clerk Brown's, I know there's dissenting opinion all around, but it seems as if just utilizing the space that we've already been allocated on a, albeit temporary basis, no matter what we do, seems to be like that makes the most sense. And I don't want to be the driving force behind that, but I'm trying to utilize as much common sense as I can here.
Yeah, no, that all makes sense. And I was trying to figure out whether we need to recess or vote on something. And then we have our next meeting coming up in 2 weeks anyway. So it sounds like, if I can summarize some of the things that I think we're all in agreement on, does that sound like a good place to start? And then we can think about where to go. So it sounds like we're all, like, as in the three of us board members, are in agreement on working towards the consolidating everything in a central location for the presidential in 2024. And we're all gearing up for what we expect to be additional turnout and all of that, and kind of seeing what we do in 2022 as sort of a test run for some things, as well as, our temporary solution as we move towards what we're looking for 2024. So I'm hopeful. This is not a vote or anything, but I'm just hopeful I'm sort of summarizing what I think both of the other board members are, I'm hearing from both of you. Is that correct?
I think
Okay.
you've adequately explained. We're definitely going to have some way to take the pressure off of Election Central.
Mhm.
That is agreed. We have made a good faith effort, or I feel I have made a good faith effort to bring some options to the table to get that to more rural voters after the commissioner's presentation, that satellite facilities in more rural parts, so for people who don't come downtown, that we have discussed this in good faith. I'm not a mind reader, but my impression is that it's less palatable for those satellites than Napa. However it goes, how the vote goes is how it goes, but I do think we are probably going to be asked to speak to that if we don't have something that's more rural. Then I understand, this is part question, part statement, Mr. Garlitz. When you were speaking earlier about construction and adding and all of those things sounded like permanent construction. And if we're only using it temporary, it was not sitting well with me, then why are we doing all these? Because that's money to build up what we need at Napa. And I guess I kind of saw those resources being better spent toward consolidation. But if you're saying, look, it's not that hard to build things out while we use this space for 2022, knowing that we're on a path to consolidation under one roof as we go forward before the presidential, it makes it more palatable if this is not permanent for me. Otherwise, it looks like we're defeating the point of everything under one roof.
Yeah, I certainly don't take it as permanent at all. And yeah, I know that it's not for the things that we know need to be done to that building. The bathrooms are an issue, and we never even discussed it till today, but a secure ballot room, again, that's not a large build out. While I know those things aren't that big of a deal in terms of not only finances, but the actual build out of it and time, materials, and all that. I know that just because I know it. I've done these things in my own home. I've done it at my place of business, so on and so forth. I used to do that when I was in schools, but everything in government takes longer and is more expensive than it should be. So that's obviously a very big concern. That said, again, crystal clear from me, you have my undying support that I will be a very loud voice to get everything under one roof. And that is for not only the benefit of you and your staff, but the benefit of future clerks and their staff. And most importantly, for the purpose that we serve, the voters of our county. It makes sense. I'm a very KISS philosophy person, and I don't know what that is. Look it up. But one roof, it makes sense.
Thank you.
And that includes the storage in Ellettsville, the storage in Timbuktu, wherever that's at, 27 counties away. That includes showers. And I'm talking about one roof for all of that stuff. Makes sense. So you have my support there, rest assured. Yes, I do think that even building out that building, that is my opinion, in that fashion I would still consider that temporary.
Let me ask one more thing, and I'm not looking for an answer. I'm not baiting you, I promise. Let me ask one more thing. If we agree to use Napa as a satellite, and I know those outlying 4 in the community, the cost of that, if we could figure out a way to reduce those so that we're kind of meeting in the middle, trying to meet some of the more rural voters, but I don't want to lend to the appearance that we're favoring one side of Monroe County over another. If we reduced it and had Napa, would that be more palatable to you? Because so let's say we went from 4 to 2.
And as I sit right here, right now, if I had the park, I can tell you this, and I'm very comfortable in telling you this. If I had the parking commitment from whoever the power at be is on those adjacent parking lots to Napa, and we had an answer or some sort of path forward from the operations side, like we did from IT, something as simple as that, I right now would move to utilize Napa as the sole in-person place for voting for early and general. I would move, in addition to that, on the motion, I would say that all of the other administrative, military, and mail-in be at Johnson, and we could utilize the 2 spaces, second floor at Showers, since we have them already allocated for the training that Sherry needs. In my head, that seems like the most concrete answer that we have right now, but there are still question marks. So I don't feel like you were baiting me at all. I'm happy to share that. That's my opinion. That doesn't mean I'm right. I think that the idea of going out and utilizing the additional facilities with our stresses on the human capital side of things, that concerns me a lot. I'm very, very concerned with being able to appropriately staff something where we have perhaps the most engaged population in elections in the history of our country. And if we are short-staffed, short-handed, it only lends for people to accuse those staff members or lack thereof of some sort of impropriety that they didn't do just because there weren't enough people there. And that's a major, major concern for me. So much like my push to consolidate everything under one roof in the future past this year, my push right here, right now would be to consolidate as much as we can. Although I completely respect and recognize that we are not necessarily pushing out to the outskirts of the county like we would with the other option. I completely respect and understand that, but I think that the ability to staff it and the expense outweighs the ability for us to advertise and make one place wholly available to everybody in the county, whether it be through just various different ride shares, public transit, who knows, church buses. There's all kinds of ways that we can help get people downtown in temporary fashion. So that's my opinion. I'm not comfortable making that motion though, because I don't know about parking and operations. That's what concerns me. I feel like if we make any motion right here, right now, we are backing somebody into a corner without them giving us the thumbs up. And that I don't like doing that to anyone. But we would certainly have to back more people into a corner if we went the other, the lesser of two evils right now as it sits is what I just proposed, because we would be backing a whole lot of people into a corner if we were to go the other direction.
One more thing. So when knowing the money, and it would be some more money, Tree has shared that on the meeting today. So when the commissioners have said if we needed more money, they would go with us. That's still, you still have heartburn.
Yeah, that to me, that's a problem with government. It shouldn't be a money pit.
It should not, but wait till you go to budget hearings with us this year.
I know, trust me.
Asking for those election dollars is not easy, and having to convince people that you cannot run an election on the same amount of money that you did back in the 80s when they were first on the council I'm very serious. I wish I was kidding. I wish I was kidding. You genuinely have to say, this is why it's costing you more. And I agree with you with election security on the line and all of the integrity of the results. We are going to be backed into a corner, and this is history, which is what I've been trying to say. This is history, and the decisions that we make are going to impact not just me, not just this office at this time, but future clerks. And that's not a partisan thing, that's a fact. Mm-hmm. And I am going up to the State House 2 and 3 times a week, arguing, on behalf of all 92 clerks, so that we don't have to face these constraints. Our hands are being tied every which way. And so we have got to make decisions that not only impact us now, but going forward in the future, and it's not just going to come back on the clerk in question, whether that's me or a future clerk. It's going to come back. You're not going to forget this. It's horrible what's going on behind closed doors. We're talking about forensic audits, and that is not palatable to me, because that implies that there's something underhanded going on within the clerk's control. I mean, this has just gotten out of hand. And so I didn't mean to get on a soapbox there, but we are going to have to make some decisions. I guess I feel if you're not comfortable making something today, we've got to figure out a way to meet again before the February meeting and figure out a way to get these questions answered. I am at a legislative conference the first part of next week. I won't be back in the office before Thursday, but I could meet on Thursday. But we've really got to take some votes, like you said, so that we know what's going on a pathway to something more permanent.
Can I interject something here? I did find a file that I knew I had someplace, but in 2012, we were voting in the Curry building. And then we had some satellites there. They were ECC, Evangelical Christian Church, Community Church, I'm sorry. for 3 days, National Guard Armory for 2 days, Assembly Hall for 2 days, St. John's Catholic Church for 2 days, St. Paul's United Methodist Church for 2 days. And then in 2010, we were at the Armory along with Curry. 2008, we were at the Curry building. We also had satellites, Sherwood Oaks Christian Church for 3 days, Ellettsville Fire Station for 3 days, in the Hyper building at IU for 3 days. Yeah, so that's kind of going back of what our, now there could have been something else. This is stuff I accumulated over the years, and I'm trying to put it together in some kind of fashion. Maybe somebody has more information. That was me filling in the blanks to the best I could. So I am really sure that those are correct. There could have been other things that I don't know about.
So, Clerk Brown, I think that is important, to respect the fact that you're going up to State House or to Indy the beginning of next week. So I think we have two options on the table, and I'm happy to be crystal clear. I'm happy to make the phone calls right now for option number one. And I would say if everyone is available, at least us three are available to take a short recess and let me make phone call to not only all of those facilities that are proposed, but to someone somewhere and we can perhaps divvy this up with the convention center, someone that can give us an answer that we will have that parking and be able to cone it off, for lack of better terms, during early and general if we do that. And then someone within the county on the operations side to just get a kind of a informal blessing from them that this can be done prior. And April 5th is not the date, let's be honest. That's the date we need to be ready to rock. It's got to be a week minimum before that. So we need to get that blessing, and then perhaps some sort of contact at all of these proposed satellites. I am happy to hop off right now in the recess and call all of them to see if these are available. And if that is not an option, I would propose this, what I believe is the second best option, is to reconvene next Thursday. Personally, I'd rather get it done right now. My wife absolutely despises that about me, that I'm a very, let's knock this out, because, she just doesn't like that I'm a very let's go. So there are definitely advantages to that. Here, I think that would be an advantage so that we can push forward with a decision. But I also understand and respect if that's not something that everybody else wants to do. So I'm open to either of those, but either way, I would volunteer myself to make those phone calls, as so long as someone is able to direct me in the right place.
I'll defer to the chair. We can recess, or we can have the answers we need next Thursday. Let me know what we're doing.
Okay, great. I'm all for giving other people homework.
I'm happy.
Taking them off my plate. Yeah, I mean, if you are, willing and able to look at the answer, or, try and get the answers to those questions, I do think it makes sense for us to recess. And I'm not sure if it makes that much difference if we try and reconvene in the next couple of days versus next Thursday. I do have that available. I just checked. And if Clerk Brown is available, then, that gives you, I know, Mr. Garlitz, you'll be working really fast, but you may not get responses immediately to your questions as well, right? So, I think that makes sense if you're all on board with that. And I did want to say that just generally what I've really appreciated about this board, both with Mr. Howell and Mr. Garlitz, or Mr. Turner and Mr. Garlitz, is that I think that it's always been clear from the beginning that everyone on the board is really committed to expanding access and making it as easy to vote in Monroe County as possible, whether we're talking about the primary, the general, midterms or the presidential election. So I really appreciate that, because that's something we can't always take for granted, right? And so I think that's really important to note as our starting point for everyone. And it sounds to me like what we are thinking about is, so, we're all committed to expanding access to voting and making it as easy as possible for our citizens to vote here. But also, moving towards this centralized solution for 2024. And then it looks like for 2022, we're trying to figure out the best possible combination in terms of being most efficient in our use of resources, both in terms of people and costs and locations, and coming up with the best solution that we can in the meantime while we work towards a more permanent solution. So, I appreciate that both of you have brought up these important concerns, right? Like Clerk Brown, we have to answer to the commissioners also, right, on their requests for satellite, as well as costs and locations. And Mr. Garlitz, you've raised that, we have to be able to, we know that we have to make decisions and tough choices at some point. And so how do we kind of find the best pathway to do that, right, given our existing resources and what we know our team can do. So, all of that said, I do, if you both agree, I do think it makes sense for us to have a brief recess and then plan to meet next Thursday to pick up where this is left off. And then that gives us time to kind of think about the different proposals coming out today. It gives me a chance to catch up and watch the video of earlier in this session and just make sure I'm clear and have all my questions answered. And you've all been very patient with me as I ask my questions that I know you probably answered 3 times earlier in the session.
So I am not in the room with my calendar. I'm in a different part of the Justice Building, but I can tell you that my conference ends Wednesday. I leave on Monday for Indianapolis, and I expect to be back in the office on Thursday. So that works for me if we're recessing. That's all I can say.
Okay. Are you able to, would you be able to let us know if you have availability on Thursday when you return?
No,
Are you sure?
I don't have availability sooner than Thursday because I won't be done until Wednesday. I believe our breakout session at the conference where I have to give a legislative update ends at 3 something, and then I'll be driving back. So I will not be returned to the office until Thursday of next week. So I'm telling you, I'll figure out if I have a conflict, I will figure that out so that I can be on this meeting next Thursday, because we're going to have to take some votes.
Yeah, and we all want to move forward as quickly as possible.
Want to move forward. Sorry, I was going to say something. I changed my mind. Sorry.
Oh, sorry for interrupting as well. I'm still getting used to all of the Zoom things. Okay, so I think that gives us all some homework, and I guess I don't know if before we move to recess, I know we do have public comments and board member comments on the agenda. So let me just ask this to both of the board members. Do you feel like we've discussed, have we fully discussed the questions you have at this point, I guess, pending the questions you're going to seek answers to, Mr. Garlitz?
Yeah, I would just, let me, while we're all here, get these things answered so that I can move forward with my homework. Parking at Napa in the parking space. Who am I calling and or contacting or emailing to get that question answered? Would that be someone directly at the convention center, or is it someone else within the county? I need whoever that contact is, and maybe that's a rabbit hole. Maybe we have a starting point there, but I need someone to call first.
Let me ask you this. When you're talking about the parking at the convention center, are you saying like using that as overflow from the area around the Napa?
the 3 adjacent parking, I look at it as a quadrant, right? So Napa, if you're looking at an aerial, there are 4 Napas, right? 3 of them don't have a building.
Or Napas.
Does that make sense? And
Yes.
so I need to know who I need to talk to make sure that we can rope off the 3 other places so that we have access to that and nobody else is going in there. And if they do, I don't know, I'm calling a tow truck. I have no idea. But who can we get that commitment from that is our space during early primaries and early voting all the way through general?
I would say Angie Purdy or the commissioners directly.
Yeah.
Okay. Next, operations, the physical build out. Who am I asking? I think his name was Chris.
Greg Crone,
Greg, sorry.
CROHN.
And can somebody email? I don't think I have his email. I have Angie and the commission.
I think he's been copied on some emails that have been sent to the board.
Perfect.
So you should be able to get that one pretty quickly.
And then what are the, and I will, Attorney Baker, you may want to chime in on this, but I would, on these questions to these people, I'm hopefully going to do it in writing if I could find email. Is it out of bounds to copy my fellow board members on that?
I would not. Just correspond directly with the folks you want to talk with, and save your feedback to your fellow board members to the public meeting.
Fine. Thank you for that. Clerk Brown, who are the contacts at the 5 spots that we have now? And if you don't have that readily available, I completely understand. I'm not trying to put you on the spot with that. But
No, I'm going to ask you to reach out to Tree.
I'll give you those. I'll give you those. I'll send them to you in an email.
Perfect. And then the last thing, Tree, could you also get me the exact dates that we will be needing?
Sure, absolutely.
Spaces,
I've already got those for you. Okay, no
both
problem.
times. And then
Okay, so
I
did-
assure you, I will get that done and those messages and those questions asked no later than tomorrow. It will probably be done this afternoon if
For
I get
those-
it.
All right.
For those spaces, are you talking about 2 weeks of early voting or 4 weeks of early voting?
Well, I think what I will do is propose it as either option. Do we have what would be, the availability, I guess, during this time frame? Can we have it for 4? Can we have it for 2?
You
That's
remember,
a
if you
great
remember,
question.
my initial proposal was moving week to week. And then I think the feedback we got last time is that it would be better to staff them simultaneously. But whatever we do in the primary, we have to do in the general, so that if you don't remember anything else as you're talking to them, if they agree to it for the primary, they have to agree to it for the general.
Yes, I
Okay,
would. Yeah.
So you're saying you're going to potentially do them 4 weeks each location?
I'm asking the board what we are considering, what's palatable, because when I initially presented it, I was trying to build upon Linda Robbins moving from place to place. I didn't even realize 2 days until Karen just said it. I thought it was every 3 days, but apparently there was some times where it was 2 days and she got more locations in. So if we're not moving week to week, then I get the impression that we're looking at simultaneously the last 2 weeks having those satellites.
So every last 2 weeks?
But I'm asking the board for clarification because at some point we're going to have to take a vote, and what are we taking a vote on?
So my personal opinion, Clerk Brown, would be to ask those facilities if they are open to both of them pending our decision. I think that makes sense. I could be wrong if you guys disagree, but I'm happy to ask both questions, or I'm happy to ask for only either. I thought
the
both
last
proposals were
meeting
still on the
was-
table.
If
I
both
think the last
voters-
meet,
Oh, no, Sherry, sorry.
sorry, I just want to say the last meeting, Nicole proposed 1 week per site. And then there was a discussion of consolidating them into closer to election day, either 1 week or 2 weeks. And it wasn't just a 2 week everywhere versus a 1 week. There were options being talked about the last week before election at all of them, or possibly the last 2 weeks, because that is really crunch time in terms of early voting.
And here's the delicate balance. I presented this in a way to make voting accessible to more rural voters. The problem is that, as someone mentioned, there are voters who want to wait until closer to election day to, in case something salacious came up, they want to know before they cast that ballot. In my mind, when I initially proposed this, it was the same because of the staffing concerns that Tree and Karen mentioned earlier. It was a team that really loves doing satellites, going from location to location, so that the rest of our staff helped us in the overseas and military absentee and in-person voting. So the discussion kind of morphed in that meeting in early January. So I was just trying to help you better direct the questions that you might be asked of those locations. Are we looking at 2 weeks? Are we looking at 4 weeks? If they're available, again, it's going to be a cost, but we have the commitment that look, Greg Crone is on the meeting. I missed that.
Hey, Greg just chimed in.
Sorry, all, I was in another meeting that kept me over. I apologize.
Well, good. I could check this off my list, Greg.
All right.
So for our potential physical build out needs at Napa, should we utilize that facility for in-person voting or any other, whatever it may be? I think the max changes, I guess, that we would need for the physical space would, from what our previous conversations were the bathrooms and the potential to build out a small secure ballot room. And then any and all physical security issues such as locks, doors, hinges. I have no idea what else might be on there. Is that feasible to have completed perhaps the week prior to April 5?
For some of the things like the locks, security cameras, things like that, I don't see that being an issue. Any of the major construction work, like possible bathroom remodel, the addition of a ballot room, if we have to do any parking lot work, depending on the usage, some of the parking lot may need some pavement work. The sooner I can get on that, the better, but I can't guarantee that I could make that by April 1st. I'm still having a problem right now getting contractors to even come on site to give us quotes for some of the other projects that we have going due to COVID staffing shortages and that nature. So while I'd like to say I can guarantee that, I cannot, but I can certainly get as many contractors involved as possible to try to make that happen.
So what percentage are you at if you're throwing a dart at a wall here?
Okay.
Positive percentage.
I can say we could have it 50%. Anything that needs security wise, cameras, things of that nature, I think could be done. But anything construction related, I could possibly see being a holdup. So we could get you the bare minimum you needed going with security cameras and those things, because the bathroom is there and does work. But
it does. Okay.
Yes.
So it's not ideal, but it works.
Exactly. So I'd be comfortable with 50% by April.
Could you have us completely built out by early for general?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so we're 50%, 100%. That's good numbers. I like that. Okay, so that answers one question. Thank you so much for chiming in. I appreciate that.
Certainly.
And then I'll get with the commissioners and Ms. Purdy regarding the parking. Do you happen to know, Greg, if that all three adjacent lots to Napa Building are county owned or somewhat facet of?
They are county owned as part of that convention center board group. I have Jeff Cockrell is speaking with Talisha Kopic, who handles all that property for the city, to see exactly how much parking lot we're talking about there. I believe that we'd have access. There's 3 lots that surround that property. So trying to find out from Talisha now exactly how much of that would be going with Napa and if we'd have to do anything else with the other adjacent lots to make that part of it.
Well, even I wouldn't say with Napa per se, perhaps just available to voters for the 2 4-week periods. Is that fair?
Yeah, so a lot of this will be decided. So it's going to depend on whether you guys decide to use this as a voting location or if it's just going to be staffed by voting registration personnel. We need a lot less parking lot if it's used for ballot counting and things like that versus a satellite location. So that has a large impact on that.
So I think we need our answer based on worst case scenario. So the max usage.
Okay.
We would just need to know if we had that available. So can I check that off my list too then, the parking issue? Will you be able to get an answer for me on that?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Now I just got to call 5 unknown people. Tree, you're going to give me that list. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. That saved me some time.
Sure.
Okay, well, thank you. So you have your homework, right, Mr. Garlitz? We have our plan for next week, and that we can recess at the close of this meeting to get that information. And, and I think we're also, all aware of the history of all of these different things, that it's been difficult to get agreement in the past. So I appreciate that, get unanimous agreement in the past. And so I appreciate that everyone's looking so closely into all of these issues. So, okay, if any other questions from the board members before I move to the next agenda item?
One last question. I'm so sorry. Clerk Brown, at the facilities that I'm going to be calling on, I don't really have to ask anything other than, are you available, right? I mean, we know that parking shouldn't or probably isn't going to be an issue.
Right.
We'll have access as we needed, all that good stuff. Is that fair?
Right. We're looking at availability. So I would just identify yourself as a member of the Board of Elections and that we're exploring our early voting opportunities. Your site has been mentioned as a potential satellite location. This is when we would need it to be available. Would you be amenable to that? And they have to agree, if they do it in the primary, that they also, early voting for the primary, they also have to do it early voting for general. So
Yes.
So those are the things, the minimum things we need to consider. Am I right, Tree? Nod. Okay. So those are the things we need.
There is some more. I need to know that, like, at the end of the day, do I have to get all my equipment and take it somewhere else? Can I leave my equipment there? Do they have a door that locks that I only have the key to?
Could you send
That
me
I
all
only
those-
have, I will.
Send those in writing so that I have them in the email when you send the context, please. And
Sure,
thank you.
you're gonna do your own introduction. Fair enough?
Yes, I'll just act like I wrote all those questions.
There you
So
go.
please
There
don't
you
give me
go.
For plagiarism.
I appreciate it.
And the last thing, I'm perhaps this isn't to Clerk Brown. Maybe it's, I don't even know who this one would be, but I'm directing it your way. Do you want me to inquire about cost at those facilities as well, or is that
No,
don't even worry about that?
no, sir.
You got it. I'm on it. That's all I had.
Okay. Thank you. So I'm going to move now to new business, and I'm going to assume that there are no board member comment. I'll give everyone a chance, but I think we're done. Okay, great. So no board member comments. So we want to provide the opportunity for public comment. So I'll make my usual announcement that if there's any members of the public here who would like to make a comment, we have allowed 3 minutes per comment, and anyone who's interested in making the comment can use the raise hand function on the Zoom to let us know that you are interested in making a comment, or type something in the chat so that we know that you're interested in making a public comment. So I'll just pause again and just make sure, I'll scan everybody to make sure I haven't missed anyone and don't see any raised hands. Okay, I don't see any raised hands or anything in the chat. So I'll move to our next item of business.
Karen has something.
I have 2 things that should have been under new business, but if you want to, this is a long meeting, I can wait till next week if you want.
I guess it's up to you. Do you, are they?
They're pretty comparatively.
Sure.
All right. Okay, so this, we have the candidate filing on, gosh, today's Wednesday, right?
No, Thursday.
Thursday, sorry. Yes, so yesterday was our candidate filing, January 19th. Everything was due at noon. And I ended up having 2 people that were late. One was just late by an hour and 23 minutes, and the other one came in at 3:59 last night. So I have all of the CFA 4s filed. We're very happy with that. And I guess I need to know from you that those 2 people that were late, do you want to have them come in and explain? They really just said, they just kind of forgot. I mean, but so sometimes you've had them come in. They both have been late once before. So this is their second, and usually with their second one, there is no fine. One of them has been finalized then since then. So what do you want to do with that?
In the past, have they just gotten some kind of warning, or you were saying possibly a fine? Since this is
They won't get a fine if you go by what the board has set up before, because they have to be, 3 times, or is it the 4th time? I don't remember. And then there's a percentage of the fine. Sometimes the board wants them to come in to make sure that they understand that they've been late, don't do it again, a little bit of that. And sometimes the board hasn't. So I don't know really what you want to do.
Either way, it's a slap on the wrist.
Yes, and they both felt really bad about it. So I think it'd be fine to let it go, but I don't know if I have that option to give you that opinion.
I was going to say that I would be inclined to let people have a little bit of pandemic grace, given, all that's going on. And it doesn't sound like they were, I don't want to say not significantly late, but at least the same day and within a couple hours, right?
Right, exactly. And they both were very aware of that. I mean, they didn't just flip it off. It happened.
I'd like to note publicly, though, that Karen sent emails to people the day before saying that your CFA 4 is due before noon tomorrow. That is not required of her. She does that out of grace and generosity, trying to assist every candidate. So I certainly support the board's desire, especially since we have more pressing matters to address, but just publicly, I want to be very clear that you get a lot of grace and a lot of opportunities that we are not statutorily bound to provide to help you get that report. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, she even emailed an additional copy to anybody who needed to submit a CFA 4, so they could have printed it out right then and there. And so, okay, I'm off of my soapbox. Thank you.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was going to say that I've also seen everyone in the office be extremely helpful and sort of bending over backwards to be helpful and accommodate people's questions, or if they need help with anything.
Yes, and then I did send actually another one if they were late. I had like it was a crazy day, but from 11 o'clock, I sent the ones that were late or hadn't come in yet, sent them a second reminder, hurry up, get here, you have an hour. So, but one of them I know went to an email that he doesn't really use very often, and that happens too. And I can't send them to the county if they're county employees.
Do we need to move to do anything, or do you feel like we would only we need to do a motion if we were going to do something other than sort of extend the grace? That sounds like you have already been quite kind.
Yeah, well, that's not my call.
I can make a motion giving the extenuating circumstances and our having other pressing matters that we not dismiss, but accommodate with that letting them off the hook, so to speak.
Yes, sort of acknowledging the lateness, but also extending some grace. Yeah. Okay. I guess I can second that motion. Can I second? I think I can second the motion. And then we do a roll call.
All right, Chairperson Rana, Clerk Brown,
Yes.
and Board Member Garlitz.
Yes.
The motion has been approved 3-0. And then I'll just send them an email explaining what has happened, and they will be happy to hear that.
Yeah, and maybe a reminder about the importance.
Yes. A fourth reminder.
The wag of the finger. So one more that's pretty interesting. I've never had to say this before, so I probably have your attention now. But we have a campaign that's called Hoosiers for Freedom. And the person who started that, I'm just not going to say his name, but obviously anybody can do some research and find out. The committee has not been very active, and it's down to $5 in there, $5.80. And the treasurer wants to close it, rightfully so, but the originator normally is the one that closes it. So I've talked to the state, and they said there aren't any real clear laws on this, and so it's kind of up to the election board. But the big problem is that he is in prison in Knox County, and he's waiting for a jury. He'll be tried in March. So there's not much probability of him getting out and being able to take care of this. And it's just also, there is kind of strange too, that he actually owes the committee $2,300. I believe that was the amount. And so what Angie Nessmeyer, I felt like she was saying, is it's up to the election board, but if the committee is willing to forgive that, then the treasurer can close that account and just be done with it. So if you're willing to go along with that, I mean, I don't even know if it, like I said, she said there's not a law written up there when somebody ends up in prison, apparently.
Do we know whether all the people involved that you just mentioned have agreed on this course of action? Like, do they?
The only person I really have contact is the treasurer, and it's almost like the whole committee has disbanded. It's a PAC, sorry. No one's doing anything. They haven't met for, I don't think, maybe since 2020. It's been a long time. There's been no money, no dues being paid. Nothing's been happening. And she just feels like it's all falling on her, which it would. And she just can't see any reason for it to stay open. And I think they have like a PO box that they have to pay rent on that. So they're going to be ending up owing that money. And she feels like she would have to pay it out of her pocket because they only have $5.80.
Would board action close it?
You can do that if there's a longer length of time, but at this, I don't think you can. But she says she feels, Angie Nussmeyer felt like the treasurer could just sign off and she did a annual yesterday, and she can just do another one and do a final, but she has to get rid of that $5.80. She'd have to give it to a party or another candidate or something. And so when she can close that out, then she can finalize it. And the state thought that would be fine. But I think she basically wanted the election board to know what was happening. And if you had some other plan, then you could make another decision.
Doesn't sound like we could make one.
Yeah. I haven't heard of any committee that the person has borrowed money from the committee. It's definitely on the form, but it's usually the other way around. They put money in, they loan money to the committee or the PAC. I think this is my first I've ever seen that he actually got money from the PAC.
Mine as well.
Yeah. And he is being charged with money laundering and fraud.
Oh my.
Yeah.
I've got nothing. I don't know what we could do. I appreciate the information. Thank you for notifying us.
So,
I guess I don't.
So let me talk this through. Just what if he has some kind of opportunity in March, some kind of trial, something.
Yes.
So let's talk this through. If we took no action today, we've got at least 2 election board meetings between now and the time he has this opportunity, maybe to go free and address this. If we took no action today, could we just address it at a future meeting, like calendar it for the April meeting?
I guess my concern with that is that I don't want to saddle the treasurer with another bill that
Sure.
she's the kind of person that she would feel like she would have to pay it. I don't know how much, I don't know what bills they have. I'm sure it's a PO box, and I don't know if they pay that monthly, but she said it's coming up. Maybe you have to pay it 6 months. I don't know.
I think you do pay a PO box every 6 months. I mean, you could pay it annually, but you get a due notice at least every 6 months.
And I could find that out from her. I could ask her about that.
Yeah, I mean, if she didn't indicate any, or I mean, I understand that she would want to, move forward on this, but it didn't, I don't know if there was any sense of urgency that it has to happen right now, right? Other than costs would accumulate.
I was just thinking, Karen, I would just advise her what you were advised of from the state, and perhaps say she can close it if she wants, and then it's kind of out of your hands and our hands, right?
Right. She has probably zero thoughts of that money being recouped.
Right.
She can buy a gallon of gas with the $5.
Oh, yeah.
You talked to Coach Evar?
I talked to Angie, and I have her email. I can read it to you.
Please.
Okay. She says, since he owes the committee money, then I suppose the committee could forgive the debt and close out the committee in the manner described below, which was her signing off as treasurer. And the treasurer should document everything, and if there's a complaint filed in the future, she would have it explain her decision-making to the county election board. There's not great clarity in statute on how to handle these issues, so I think folks have to understand what the law permits and makes decisions to the best of their ability when an issue doesn't squarely fit. But that's not my call, whatever they or the county election board does in this matter.
If we could take that email and then we could forward it on to our attorney, which is, Lee, and see what he would say and then make a decision based on that.
Okay, I
I
can.
mean, that gets us off the hook too.
Mhm.
And I think that makes sense because then we can be, more solid in whatever actions we would take going forward as well.
Okay, I will do that.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, is that, did I skip anything else under new business? Sorry again, if I did.
I don't think so.
Okay. So let me announce then our last item is that our next scheduled election board meeting is February 3rd at 1 p.m., but we've just discussed having a meeting in between next Thursday, which would be January 27th at 1 p.m. As well, and to follow up on the discussion that we had today. And so in light of that, let me move to recess, or maybe ask for a motion to recess for today, and then we will pick up next week on the 27th at 1 p.m. again.
I will make a motion to recess rather than adjourn.
Second.
All right, Chairperson Rana, Clerk Brown,
Yes.
and Board Member Garlitz.
Yes.
Motion has been approved 3-0.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for all of your attention and information and patience for today. So with that, we will recess and we'll pick up again next Thursday. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.